So, welcome back, everyone. My name is Paul Smyers, and I am making a second in my series about a really important subject that's relevant today is the cyclic recurrence of the so-called God-man, the avatars, the messiahs, and it's a very, very ancient tradition, and it goes back a very, very long time in human history. And a lot of it is really based on the cycles of astronomy and periodic cycles within the Earth and the solar system and so on. And a lot of different authors have explored that. And it's in the records of the Sumerians on their clay tablets and so on. All around the world, people kept track of the cycles of the so-called ages, the yugas, the periods of time. And what I'm going to get into here in a minute here is about the so-called hierarchy of all the talk about celestial beings and angels and this and that, and the gods and goddesses and deities of this and that kind. All of that kind of conversation is very, very ancient and has a lot to do with a perceived order in the universe and how various kinds of beings are involved in the creation and maintenance of Earth and its systems and so on. And then, as part of that, there is a recurring divine assistance that the grace of the Almighty, responds in different ways. There's many very beautiful beings who have been on this planet, and according to the ancient tradition in Hinduism, it's not like there's a bunch of different gods. It's more like there's one God, and then it has various manifestations. And so the concept is that depending on the kind of culture that's going on and the times and the seasons and the various kinds of social structures that are on the planet at the time, that when at different times these various kinds of great beings come onto this planet and they just take a birth. They take there's many beings who have processed through and gotten the understanding that they're not this body, just like we all are not this body. And we can elevate in our consciousness so that when we leave this body, there's some kind of a continuous experience. You see, so now this is a very ancient and deep subject, okay? Because we talk about the so-called God-man, and the whole idea about these beings is that somehow they're beyond healers. They can transmit energy and do so many things. They even help. Their presence helps the other various kingdoms, or wherever they go, if they touch an animal or around in you, and if they're around insects or something, there's a certain presence that these beings have, and that presence really comes from God. It's not. It's just like God has many windows, you might say. If you talk about an infinite God, obviously you can't describe it, and it has a lot more than one form. You see, because it's infinite. See, so now I want to recommend some really great books. If you stick around here, I try to include them in part of the commentary here. And the main thing that these avatars and great sages, they come in cyclic ways, and they also respond to the need, the psychic need of the collective humanity. There's a hunger and a thirst or something, and it draws forth some response from the deity, the infinite deity. Okay, well, again, as a manifestation that in a particular culture, in a particular area of the world, or a particular way, in a particular style of body, they come and we are all part of it. You see, like each one of us, just like one day we might be doing the same kind of service in somewhere, and helping out a large population and helping them grow and experience. So I want to recommend a few books, okay? Because basically what these sages teach us is science. There's a science of the soul, you might say. There really is. There's a specific techniques. There's fantastic technology that we have in this body, and that these great sages that have been masters and teachers and demonstrated fantastic use of perception and various kinds of energy fields and so on, and healing and all that. That's all a science. There's an understanding that comes from deep immersion in meditation and the joyful bliss of God. You might say there's a lot of various kinds of understandings that happen to people because we get inspired. We see how the creation is manifested and how it's working, and we inspired to create objects of art and music and so on. So there's a science to developing this human frame, this human body, because face it, it's like the Maserati. We got buttons on this body here. We got techniques and we got things that can happen with this body that, just like if you get in a car that has a whole lot of buttons, you don't know what they go for. But you see, that's the technology that the sages try to teach. And not every student wants to go into the advanced levels. You see, there's so many various things. For example, just give it really simple here. One book here, Energetic Anatomy. Okay, now this is a recent book. But basically, there's people in modern times that know about the human anatomy and the energetic fields that it produces and the various things that get out of whack in the body because of posture or foods or injuries and various kinds of things. But there's an energy flow in the body, and this has a lot to do with healing. So any initiate or sage or someone like Jesus or many of there's a science to healing by managing the energy in the body. For example, I'll run through a few of these quickly here. Teaching about the consciousness of the atom, the energy that moves the atom moves us. In meditation, in our inner consciousness, we can start to get a grasp of the as above, so below, the way the mechanism works, how we're a microcosm of the macrocosm. There's certain elemental principles that go from top to bottom in creation, and the consciousness of the atom and the inner perception, the soul in its mechanism. Again, there's technology, there's techniques, we have a working system here. Our body is a fantastic thing. You go look in the mirror, I don't care who you are, go look in the mirror and say, wow, I got one of those. Yeah, you do. You got a human body. Soul and its mechanism. Okay, this is from the Alice Bailey, the Lucis Trust. Again, just look at the book, and the definition of a real teacher is if what they teach you works and fits in with your perception. Some of these things are very, very complicated, these subjects, okay? But with a little bit of effort, you listen to it and get into your own intuition, and you can understand your own system here. Again, really quickly here, the human aura. A lot of people know about the aura. It's like a candle flame around us. We're consisting of like energy and heat and sound and various kinds of activities in the body. The chakras. This guy, Leadbeater, he was a psychic. I can't remember. I think it was the early part of the 20th century. And he was very intuitive and psychic. He had like inner perceptions, like clairvoyance. Our body is an energy system. That's all it is. It's just a whole bunch of different kinds of energy, and the whole idea is synchronizing and lining up all that energy within us so that we feel healthy and happy and go through our life and function. You see, so again, quickly here, it's a sacred science. This is again another book, Egypt. It was all around the sacred science, how to increase your perception, how to synchronize and feel a little bit of the immortal beauty in God and in while you're in a physical body, you see, and how to develop various kinds of energy uses and moving your energy about, like in Tai Chi and all those kind of techniques. Again, we've had very recent great sages. This fellow here, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, he was into transcendental meditation. He has a really funny voice, but he talks. It's all about sound. It's all about using sound and mantras to integrate, to focus our attention and build our consciousness and stay focused and so on and healthy. He was a really great sage, and he was a living sage not too long ago. Again, this is Swami Satchidananda. He was just a really beautiful servant. He just was such a humble man. And he, lived a long life, and he set up a place in Virginia, actually. I went to it one time. He's passed away, but he was in the 70s, around the time of the great musicians like the 70s, the Beatles, and so on. And he taught a lot of people and inspired a lot of people to develop their own faculties and so on. And again, he was a servant. He really just he was all about just being God's will, being humble, uniting the religions, being kind. And then he offered techniques and practices and taught people how to feel that synchronicity with the divine within their own system. So again, there have been recent yogis and gurus of all kinds on this planet. Modern work, people getting into the physiology of consciousness. You see, we have a techniques. We have our consciousness is embedded in the universe. This part of it. This is like, it's such a fantastic thing that we have this body. Physiology of consciousness. This is like a big book. Robert Keith Wallace, PhD, and John Hagelin, Introduction, PhD. Again, modern investigation into potentiality of the human frame. Again, here's a fantastic book, The Temple in Man. Now, there's a temple in Egypt that's laid out, and this fellow here who wrote this book, Swallowed the Woolly Beats. He lived around there for a long time and measured carefully. I think it was the early part of the 1900s or something. And he did fantastic measurements, and they had laid out this temple that is just like, it had every symbolism of the human body. It's like overlaid. It's like the perfect body. It had a place where the pineal gland was, and all the measurements and everything was. You have to read this book. It's kind of like a really amazing measurements that these people had. Like they were basically trying to design the absolute perfect human body. Basically, this is what the whole concept of refining the body so that it can synchronize with the infinite, and so you can have that physical experience while you're alive through the use of various techniques and understanding the way your body systems work. You see, the muscles and the eyes and all the senses and so on. It's a profound thing that we have this body. Esoteric healing. Alice Bailey, esoteric healing. Okay, this one kind of got batted up. I've had this a long time, but how energy moves. Healing is a science. This is like organizing our system, our body, energy. Our body is just a conglomeration of various energies. If it's in harmonious movement and the cycles are going and the breathing is going nicely and smoothly and all the cycles are working, you got great health and great awareness. So it's all about, like, there's, again, science. There's a science to healing. There's a science to all this stuff. Now, there are different groups of people, and there's collectively various sages at different levels, and what they call initiates, and people who understand different levels of these esoteric sciences, and they communicate amongst each other the problems of humanity, the destiny of the nations, what's going to happen, because someone a little detached and a little wiser than all of us has to be a little bit more conscious, because it's like a pilot. The pilot's got to pay attention to the airplane. Meanwhile, the people in the back can do whatever they want. But all of us on this planet, we're doing whatever we want. But somebody's got to keep an eye on what's going on. And there's these sages who have a very serious interest in the human survival and all. It's a beautiful thing. It's like if you have a garden and it's all like all these beautiful roses and flowers, you want to take care of it. Well, this is the same thing, that essentially the love of God, the Almighty, the infinite beingness of all kind, just channels it through various kinds of servants and groups and so on to bring forth into manifestation different teachings that help us out. And it's a lot of it is cyclic, because that's a good way of measuring time. And it's written in the stars, and it's a universal way of measuring. You see, that's why people watch the stars for a long time. Again, the Great White Brotherhood, not meaning that they're white people, it's just a way of expressing people who want to join in the spirit of raising the consciousness of humanity, and whatever small part they can play, different things they can do. And then along the way, during our service, we grow and we experience it being a channel of bringing something beautiful. The whole prayer is like, thy will be done, or let heaven be on earth, as is above, so below. We want the most ultimate beauty to manifest on this planet while we are here, as much as possible. So again, maybe, with reincarnation, we get many chances, but here we are on this planet right now, and we have a chance. We're all part of an operation that's going on here. Again, one more book here, Light of the Soul. This is Alice Bailey. This is a translation and commentary on the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. I've commented on this book many times. It's a fantastic book about, again, the science, the mechanism of our awareness and how to focus ourselves on what we're likely to experience and what we can look for and the disciplines we might need and all this stuff, all about, it's a science. It's a science of having a human body. Now, as far as, the different sages, a lot of people in Christianity today, we have our churches and everything, and there's people who have various opinions about different things. But you see, long ago, all in the last 2,000 years, been lots of other people who had visions of God and Christ and writings and so on. And one of them was the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus Christ. This man, he was a lovely man apparently, and he had powerful experiences, and he wrote down, a lot of the New Testament is in here, but there's a lot of other stuff that's in here that is concurrent. There were other witnesses at the time that Jesus was here that we never get to hear about. You see, and there's things that he did and places he went that we never hear about. You see, so a lot's missing, and sometimes through inspiration, these sages will, or these beings who are now bodiless and living in the spirit realm of dimension, those kind of beings can touch people and help them and help guide them and bring forth new information. So that's another part of the process of sometimes people teach in their dreams or they receive teaching in their dreams. You see, so it's an ongoing process of uplifting humanity that's done by these great teachers. Real quickly here, symbols. A lot of the profound truths about our creation and our existence are conveyed in symbols. It's really the only way that you can grasp some of these deep concepts. Now, just real quickly here, I run through a few more books. What do people study? What would somebody want to study if they want to help people and heal people? Well, they want to study how to increase their perception. Other kingdoms. Hilarion. You got to look him up, Hilarion. Again, man, visible and invisible. You want to heal people and work with, uplifting people. Learn about the visible and invisible aspects of our own self, our own aura, our electrical energy, our breathing, science of the spoken word. It's that one guru I told you about, the mantra guy. It's all spoken word, the science of the voice, the use of the chakra, the use of the voice to line up, and we're lined up in our aura, in our clarity, and then we speak. Then it's a very powerful speech, and negative speech also has a problem. So speech is a very powerful thing. One more thing here, I'll just run through this here. The externalization of the hierarchy. Now, this is a newer book. I have marked it here. I read great parts of it a long time ago. Basically, again, there's a brotherhood. Has nothing to do with the modern types of hierarchy. This is a group. We're all souls. We're all trying to have a beautiful experience in this existence, and we're trying to live as long as we can, healthy as we can, and just have a profoundly happy and joyful life. And along the way, we're all like a brotherhood, and we're all part of this hierarchy. And basically what this guy was saying, this is one of the masters from, I think it was Tibet, and he spoke through a woman named Alice Bailey, and they worked together for a long time, and she developed a very, clear telepathy kind of communication. And the complication, I mean, if you read something like this, it's just incredibly complex. Like, oh my God, how could they? It can't be made up. It's just way, way too much, in there to be just like a fiction. It's just, and it's not just one book. So to summarize here, there's been a lot of teachers on this planet, and there's current ones. And the thing is that all good joy and beautiful love comes from the Almighty. So the whole problem that we get into in society with religion is to argue about, like, well, it's Jesus, or his name is this, or his name is that, or he's going to look like this, or he's going to come from this place, or whatever. And all this kind of the being that we need to know most is ourself. If we know our own being, then we can start understanding. We'll recognize that being that, and if you are in the presence of some of these great teachers that, I've had the fortune to be around a few of them and be around some people that are like, oh my goodness, I'm just overwhelmed with joy when just because they just, this, their body, their whole being just radiates something and you just can't like miss it. And I've had experiences like that many, many times. I've known people who actually physically faint, actually, because it's just so overwhelming. These great teachers that come on this planet, they can elevate anybody. That's the whole point. You see, this is how, the great gift of these great teachers is to make it so simple that, look, anybody that doesn't, you don't have to go live in a cave. You don't do, it's not about sin. It's not about like obedience. It's not about like, it's just sit still for a bit, breathe a little slower, feel the pulse of your own existence and how you're part of this universe. And the grace of being alive, that every second, we're being supported by 24/7. The atoms in our body are spinning around, things are going on. Amazing, fantastic life that we have. And the sad thing about modern society, we get into a lot of arguments about the whole the so-called God man, and but basically the teaching is in the summary here is just like cyclically when mankind needs it, when we desperately need it, then the teaching becomes available. The problem is that we have to be ready to listen because, there's so many concepts about these, what they're going to look like and where they're going to go and what they're going to do and how they're going to talk and what language and all that stuff. It's just really, really unfortunate because ultimately every human soul is thirsty for a heartfelt feeling of connection with the divine, okay? And they don't really need a name, or they just need the connection. It's like water. It doesn't matter what glass it's in. If you're thirsty, you'll just drink the water because this water. Then you can say, hey, well, that's a nice glass, or I didn't expect it to be in that kind of glass. But if you're really thirsty, drink the water, and then you can have a conversation. But there's a lot available on this planet right now, and there's a lot of people who have their fixed ideas about religion and so on. I encourage people like that to just think about just the broader context of what your original teacher, whether it's Jesus or whatever, wants you to understand about this life. First of all, you're not the body, and this life is simple. It's just a joyful thing. It's a gift. And then how do you make it feel good? You got to practice a little bit. You got to go inside a little bit, open your heart a little bit, and then you try to live a really clear, coherent life. You see, and it's not that difficult. But the problem is we have these books, you see, and the books, books. There's an old saying about books. Okay, books. The scriptures like shoes. You can use them to get to the temple, but when you get to the temple, you have to take them off to go inside to have the pure experience. You see, so there's a purpose and a need for these books and these teachings in the external world, but there's also a time when we have to sit down and say, okay, when all is said and done, I just take a deep breath and recognize my own being here without any judgment. Because if you look in the mirror, you don't judge yourself. You just look at yourself in the mirror and recognize that whatever, that's an incredible gift that you're looking at, you see. So I appreciate the feedback. I love to hear from people, and I hope the people will see some of my other videos and join me in the conversation about some very interesting subjects here on my YouTube channel. So like and share, please, and I hope to see you in another video. Thanks.